guys, I'm just going to invite Faye on. The lovely Faye. My beautiful friend. Let's see. Oh, I should put my headphones on actually. That would be a good idea. There she is.
Hold on. What?
Where are you?
There I am. This is going to be hilarious with us two.
That's right. Here we are. I haven't got my
Thank God
headphones.
no one else is here. They wouldn't be able to get a word in edgeways, would they?
That's so true. That's so true. Welcome. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
This is me and the lovely Faye Lawrence on here to talk about our experience. I'll get Faye to introduce herself. She's an amazing person. She's got a TED Talk. I stalked her for years, and then she eventually gave in and became my friend. And here we are.
The crazy congregate. We are now. Hey, hi Erin.
Hey, Erin.
Thanks for tuning in.
Off you go, my friend. You need to introduce yourself now.
Oh, I'm introducing myself, sorry. So I'm Faye Lawrence. I am the founder of Untoxicated, which is an alcohol-free social community. I started that when I stopped drinking 5 years ago, or coming up 5 years this year, because I realised there was a serious lack of things to do for people that didn't involve alcohol in terms of socially. And I also graduated a psych degree a month after getting sober, sorry. And I'm now studying postgrad counselling and I'm a grey area drinking coach as well. I think that's everything, isn't it? Oh, and I've just been diagnosed with ADHD.
I did. So Faye and I have known each other for a little while. We did our grey area drinking coaching together. And then funnily enough, we have become friends and we've been exchanging our experience of life, as you do. And there's been a lot of commonalities between us.
Yeah.
And we've been like, we'd be on a coaching session or a coaching call in the grey area drinking. I'd text Faye afterwards and go, was I too much? Does the person who's leading the call hate me?
Yeah.
And all this stuff, and Faye would be like,
well, it was true. We were the worst. In a group of like what? How many were there? 6?
Yeah.
Because we kept butting in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is an ADHD thing, isn't it? So
yes.
blathering on.
Absolutely. I know for me, certainly, when I found this since beginning of doing all this stuff on Zoom, is if I'm in a group, I really struggle if I can't just go first. Like I need to go first.
It's that's one of the main things why of the many, but it's one of the most things that I realised that not other people did, and I always thought it was down to growing up in a big family, which is that inability not to butt in.
Yes.
And like finish people's sentences for them and like jump in, because if I don't jump in straight away, the thought's going to be gone.
Yeah, totally. 100%. And I have to write it down and then I'll be twitching away in the corner thinking I'm not going to know what I'm talking about in a few minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. And people find it rude. People find it rude, and they, and they're like, stop and let me finish. And oh shit.
Yeah. It's interesting. Because my eldest child, because both my kids this is how I found out that I was ADHD, because both my kids got diagnosed relatively recently. I think this is really common with people who are assigned female at birth, is that they don't often get picked up as being ADHD until they're much older. And the same with autism as well. Female assigned at birth kids tend to mask a lot better, and they they don't tend to draw as much attention to themselves. And I think for a long time, ADHD was perceived to be a boy's condition, whereas now we know
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And perceived to be something that you grow out of in childhood, at the end of childhood. So adults aren't generally, and it's so interesting, Emma, because I've worked in the disability space for quite some time in other work that I do, the marketing and communications and corporate affairs stuff. And, I'm quite well versed in autism and neurodivergence, and yet here I am, 49 tomorrow, not realizing that I'm actually neurodivergent.
Yeah.
And I'm quite the more severe end as well. So it's so funny how, like, something that's right in front of your face and you think, because I worked in early intervention for autism, and I've done a lot with the autism community, and not saying that it's the same, ADHD and autism, it's not, it's quite different, but there are overlaps, and you can't see the wood for the trees sometimes. So interesting. Thank you, Emma, that's kind.
And for me as well, because I'm a bit of a shit friend. Happy birthday for tomorrow. Thanks, Don't
worry, I forgot yours as well.
Right, it's cool.
You get a memory come up like Saturday.
I know.
It was a birthday on Thursday.
That's right, that's right. And Faye and I were just laughing and talking about how in midlife, and I'm sure so many women feel this way, we've got so much stuff going on. We've got hormones with perimenopause. Potentially, so many women find that the perimenopause symptoms exacerbate what may be an underlying ADHD situation anyway, because the brain fog, so many of the things that come along with perimenopause are quite similar to some of the things
the fatigue, the forgetfulness, the forgetfulness, like you say, Emma, the brain fog, all of these sorts of things are definitely more pronounced when the estrogen's essentially draining from your body. And as we were saying, Russell Barkley, who's kind of one of the experts in the space, he talks about there's quite a distinct link between female hormones and ADHD, the symptoms. So he was talking about how it's much more pronounced in adolescence, for example, for girls, and then again menopause time. So it's interesting that, you and I have both been diagnosed, which is sort of I think it's a kind of fork in the road with sobriety, with perimenopause, and there was something else that I forgot.
Doesn't matter. Faye and I decided at the beginning of this that we're owning the brain fog. So it's just is what it is. So just expect this as we go through.
Yeah, definitely. The shockers, absolute shockers. So I think it's that sort of time in your life where I think especially once you've taken sobriety out of the picture, because I did suspect that I might be before I was sober, and I actually went to a psychiatrist back in 2014, and he said to me after about 25 minutes, because I've got quite a lot of trauma in my history, he basically was like, dismiss me, go off and read The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, which is a very good book.
Great book.
But that really set me back, because he didn't take me seriously, and I thought, oh well, I'm just neurotic then. And so that's 8 years that I feel essentially wasted, really, in that I could have been making strides knowing what I was dealing with. And it's hard not to feel, because I've fairly recently been diagnosed, so I'm still in the aftermath of finding out. And it's hard not to feel angry about that, particularly as we went down the path of addiction. And what we know is that there's a very strong link with all forms of addiction. My psych, who's an ADHD specialist, said the four main ones that he sees is alcohol and drugs, gaming, sex, and gambling.
Yeah.
And he actually said, when I asked him why he got into ADHD in particular, he said it's because he'd previously worked in prisons and then in rehabs, and he could see how much undiagnosed ADHD was there. And he said in rehabs, probably between 60 to 70% of patients. So, you know, this is what angers me, is that had I been diagnosed or had this been mooted a long time ago when I was proactively trying to seek a diagnosis, and, you know, I've had a lot of dealings with mental health professionals over the years in therapy and all of that, and it's just never been suggested. Could the addiction possibly have, you know, not gone down the path that it went? That's the thing that really, you know, angers me, to be honest. And so that's why I want to speak openly about it, because I you know, I would hope to let other people know about this, because so that, you know, they can kind of pull up stumps that it's not them, it's the lack of dopamine in your brain. You know?
And I think that for me is the biggest change, is that knowing, like, all my life I was always like the disorganized one, the, you know, the person whose head was in the clouds, the person who couldn't focus, couldn't sit down and do her homework, couldn't do, you know, and was always, you know, getting into trouble for doing impulsive things. And I remember my mum saying to me, Emma, why do you do these things? And I'd be like, I don't know, Mum, I don't know. But I thought there was something, like, you know, wrong with me, that I was broken. And now I'm like, well, this is interesting now. It's not about being broken, because I'm, you know, both my kids are the same. They've both been diagnosed with ADHD and subsequently with autism. But it's once I was going through the testing with them, I was like, Jesus, it's so freaking obvious. I was going through all the tests, I was like, oh my God, this is totally my experience. And yet we didn't know. We didn't know.
No. And for anyone who's like watching this that doesn't know much about ADHD, and I'm still learning myself, and I'm certainly not an expert or a medical professional, but your brain actually, when they do MRIs on your brain is different. So the makeup of the brain is different. Different parts of the brain fire up. So it affects your prefrontal cortex, and that's your executive functioning. And that's things like, you know, memory, organization, sort of doing things methodically, being able to self-regulate or emotionally regulate, so that impulsivity. You know, these are all things that are impacted. And you go through your life, I think, thinking that it is a personal failing. Why can't I get my shit together like everyone else? Why can't I adult like everyone else? How come everyone else manages to do all this stuff and I can't? Why is this so exhausting for me to say, for example, to work full time, and other people can do that, and they've got hobbies and they've got, you know, all these other things and exercise and everything that they do, and I'm finding just going to work is like, that's enough. Why do I have these sensory things, for example, that really impact me? So, you know, one of the things for me was like, if I was ever in a food court, it was like hell on earth, because it's just, there's too much happening. You know, and then noise is one that I know now in sobriety, that's like something it's just like, I find it hard to tolerate. So to be able to work in an open plan office, I have to have headphones on. And I realized that some time ago. I just didn't realize it was the ADHD that was causing that. I didn't understand why other people were able to tune it out and I couldn't. And the procrastination, I mean, I remember Googling, like, why can't I do, you know, make myself do, and studying stats as part of psych was just like hell on earth. You know, because like you're trying to force your brain, and it just so I think you spend a lot of time, you know, berating yourself for being lazy or being not as motivated or being, you know,
Late.
la- for being hilarious.
Yeah, for being brilliant.
You know, I don't want it to all sound negative, but
No.
I suppose it's like, if anyone's listening is feeling this way, then, you know, it could be worth exploring if there's something else going on.
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely.
yeah,
I
just
don't
that
know.
sort of failure to
Faith,
adult.
you and I had quite a different experience, didn't we, of our diagnosis? In fact, it was almost polar opposite of, you know, how they went about it. And I think that's worth talking about because everybody, I know it's such a minefield trying to work out what to do and where to go and da, 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 da. Do you want to talk a little bit about how yours went?
I'm going to get angry again.
That's okay.
Quick to anger. That's
We're
another ADHD thing. Quick to anger.
Angry middle-aged women.
Frustration, to deal with frustration. Yeah, look, as I say, went in 2014, and then again this year, I was like, nah, something's not right. And I was reading actually Jenny Valentish's book, A Woman of Substances, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
And in it, she's talking, because I was doing a writing class with her, and in it, she talks about getting an ADHD diagnosis herself. And she was talking about all the research, and I was like, that's me. That is me. She, you know, she was talking about all the things and the link with addiction, and I was like, wow, I don't think I've heard this before about the addiction link, or I just haven't paid attention. And it just all dropped into place. So I went to the GP. I had a nightmare trying to get an appointment with a psychiatrist. That went on back and forth for months. Couldn't get in, didn't even get an appointment. And I was just, because what they do, they've got such long waiting lists with psychiatrists, 6 to 12 months. It sits with them while they decide whether they can take you on, because their loads are so heavy. So they want to look at your file, look at the referral, and then go, yes, I'll take you on as a patient, or no, I won't. And eventually I found out through some ADHD Facebook groups that there was someone down here on the Gold Coast who's a clinical psych that does assessments, but they can't, psychologists can't prescribe. So a psychiatrist is coming from the medical paradigm predominantly, and they'll prescribe drugs. They can prescribe drugs because they're ultimately GPs with psychiatry on top. Whereas a psychologist can't, a clinical psychologist can't. So, but they can diagnose. So my assessment I went for 2 sessions to rule out other things, because there's a lot of other things that can present similarly to ADHD, such as depression, anxiety, addiction, autism, bipolar, trauma. You know, there's a number of things. So they have to essentially, through a process of elimination, rule that out. And then on the 3rd session, I went through like a barrage of testing. So some of those were like an online called the TOVA test, where they test your response time. And another one was a load of questionnaires and things like that. And then what he does is he takes the data away and looks at it all together and compiles a report. So I went back for the 4th session, and he said, you know, it's 50-50 before you go forward for testing, especially with my history. And that's when I got the diagnosis, moderate to severe, both inattentive and hyperactive. And I was just, honestly, I was quite shocked.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I burst into tears. Because it was validating, but also it was like, I suppose I wasn't expecting that I was as bad as that, if I was. And he was basically saying, look, it's, you know, quite surprised you even managed to complete a degree. That you functioned as well as you have. So, you know, that was the experience. And now I'm doing coaching, but now I've got to go through the rigmarole again to get medication. So I've had to go and get another referral. I'm now waiting to see a psychiatrist or see whether they'll take me on so I can get medicated. So it's it's really somewhat frustrating, because now you know you've got the diagnosis and you can't get the medication. So imagine being told that you've got diabetes, or you've got, you
Yeah.
know, heart disease or something, and oh, tough, you've got to wait another 6 to 12 months before you can get the medication for it.
Yeah.
You know, it feels quite unjust to me, after, I suppose, waiting so long to get a diagnosis, and then now it's like there's a dangling, and you know, you've got to jump through hoops to go the next step. So yeah, that was my experience. How about you?
Yeah, well, mine was a lot easier. I'm not necessarily saying it was better, because I reckon the amount of detail that you have as part of your diagnosis
Yeah.
is much more in depth than what I got. But I was very fortunate in that I was talking about it with somebody, and they recommended I looked on the ADHD. I was trying to look it up on my foundation website, and they've got like the latest places with the shortest amount of waiting time. So I went on there. They recommended this place in Sydney, which is just does online diagnosis. I think it's called Docatella, something like that. And it's psychiatrists. And I had to do a whole load of testing beforehand. And then I saw the psychiatrist, and they were like, yes, you have ADHD, both types. And then they sent my GP prescription, and then my GP prescribed me since, and I've been being monitored for that. So I've been on the medication, and I'm finding, because I've been doing this launch in the lead up to it, I'm finding I have been able to focus in a way that I wasn't able to focus before. I would definitely say, whereas like you, when I was at uni doing my counselling stuff, Jesus Christ, every
Yeah. Yeah.
every unit was like pulling teeth. Not because I didn't
Yeah.
want to do it, like I loved learning about it, but just the idea of sitting down and writing an essay and reading a textbook. I had to find so many tools to help me do that, external to myself. It was incredible.
Yeah.
So
And that's the things that you actually like, and that's one of the things that the psych said to me, was that, you know, ADHD brains have two modes: boring or not boring. And if it's boring, forget it.
Yeah.
You literally can't. It's, you know, I was working from home consulting before COVID, and I used to think, why do I have this struggle with myself? Like, it would be 3 o'clock the night before, and I'd be like on a client project and just going like, why do I do this?
I know.
And once I got into it, I was fine. But it was the thought of sitting down and doing it. You've got a question there from one of the smug ladies.
Hello. How's life changed since the meds? Well, I haven't been on them for very long. This is probably I'm still, I think, in my first month, maybe a little bit longer. And like I said, it's the focus more than anything. I'm able to focus. That's what I've noticed more than anything else. And I actually feel a bit calmer. But it's like faces. It's difficult to tell. It's difficult to tell though, because I've also just started my HRT meds, so I'm like a rattling pillbox.
Yeah.
But so I don't know which one and what's another, so it's difficult to tell. But I'm definitely feeling calmer, less tired, and more focused. Because although I was laughing with Faye, because when I did my masterclass on Monday, I literally finished the presentation about half an hour before I went on, and it was like, oh my God, I knew that I shouldn't be leaving it to the last minute, but there's something about me that just can't help it, you know.
Yeah, fine. 100%. Well, you need the adrenaline, you need that time pressure to be able to perform, and that's one of the good things, is that your ability to wing it is second to none. My ability to wing it and to be thrown in at the deep end and perform is really strong. So it's
Yeah.
not all negative. There's a lot of positives as well. But,
Yes.
you know, I think in the coming to terms with it process, I think, you know, it's interesting because, like I say, I worked in the autism community before. I've done quite a lot of work in that space and disability, and you know me, I'm all about reducing stigma with the addiction stuff as well, and
Yes.
breaking down barriers and talking openly. But then when you find that you've got a disability or
Yes.
a neurodivergence and you're like,
Yes.
oh wow, it takes you back a bit. It's sort of, oh, it's fine when it's other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now it's me. And
And there's a
yeah, it's,
frustration, isn't there, that it's sort of like things could be so much more different. That's really bad English, but you know what I mean? Things could be so different if we
yeah.
had more knowledge about it, if there was less stigma about it. I mean, the concept that people have of people with ADHD is very different, I think, than the reality for most people. And often it can be coupled with such crippling anxiety. I think that was the thing for me when I was younger, was like, yes, I'd have all this drive and stuff, but then my anxiety would just completely cripple me, so that I
Yeah,
couldn't, you know, I couldn't speak, or I'd just feel so awful about myself, I'd be questioning myself all the time. And those sort of two things together, which come very often, both my kids are ADHD, they both have anxiety, and it presents in different ways, but it's a blessing and a curse. But I think the more that
it's,
we and people like
yeah,
us can talk about it, and the more common it becomes for people to investigate it, the more that, you know, schools start to sort of educate using, you know, being aware of, you know, different approaches to education, and same with, you know, workplaces and everything. I think it's just another one of those things that needs to get more mass, so that we can accommodate each other for being different, you know?
yeah. It's interesting to me. Two things there that are interesting to me. Sorry, someone's just trying to phone me.
That's right.
One thing is how, you know, autism is really much more accepted these days, but yet ADHD isn't.
Yeah, right.
So, you know, even sort of, as you know, speaking about this, I was like, oh, I've been trying to speak about addiction, but I'm not sure I want to speak about this, because I feel like this is probably coming out about this, so to speak, is more, feels like more of a career impediment in other work that I do than the addiction stuff.
Yeah,
So
right.
that's interesting to me. But the other thing is, I think as well, Emma, is like the fact that it's not detected is a bit like with drinking.
Yeah.
Because if you're high functioning, you know, what's going on the surface is like, yeah, I'm holding it all together, but at what cost behind the scenes? So
Right.
that's what leads to the burnout, as we
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And that's
100%.
another thing where I've always felt like, why can't I do what other people can do? Why
Yeah.
can't I hold down a job in the same way other people can do? Why do
Yeah.
I leave after 12 months?
Yeah.
And, you know, why do I need time between contracts? Because I'm constantly, I find working, you know, really draining, and I burn myself out. And yeah,
Yeah.
the addiction side is in with that, because, you know, I remember as well one time, the first time I got really, really drunk, I was about 13,
Mm.
and I distinctly remember, and now obviously I know this was the ADHD, it switched this off.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I
Yeah.
had that calm that I'm hoping the meds are going to do for me, but it
Yes.
switched this off.
Yes.
And
And
I think now that that's the ADHD.
yeah. And it's so interesting. I think that is one of the main reasons that women come to me, and I'm sure for you as well, because Faye runs a coaching business too, that is one of the main reasons that when women say, why, if I say, why do you drink? They're like, to stop this noise in my head,
Yeah,
so that I can
yeah,
stop and sit down and not have that constant chatter and constant to-do list and constant just all the time, you know?
yeah. And I think that I was reading earlier today something that was put out by a professor in addiction, and it was saying that people with ADHD, I think it's about 60% of people with ADHD have a problematic a relationship with alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you're undiagnosed,
yeah,
you know, that's going to be happening, and you don't know that actually that's happening through essentially no fault of your own, through a lack of baseline neurotransmitters that everybody else has.
Yeah.
That we don't have. Yeah, so it's helped in that way, in that I feel like, you know, that kind of, that wasn't my fault. There's less feeling of, I suppose, shame around the addiction, but I'm still angry about the fact that this could have been picked up a lot earlier and possibly prevented that, and I think people need to know about it for that reason.
Definitely. And I think that we'll find more and more women getting diagnosed. I think it is becoming, you know, quite prevalent now that women are recognizing that some of the things that they've been. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. How many women in the cyberspace?
Yeah, right.
When I did my post about being diagnosed, I had all these people contacting me, women, saying, I think I've got it.
Yeah. I think it's I think neurodivergence is much more widespread than we've just all been conditioned that we, you know, to try and fit into this kind of, then I don't know the right word for it, but you know, the normal kind of way of being, and we've all been masking and trying to behave like that and thinking that there's something wrong with us, you know.
Yeah, and I think the other thing as well, you know, that has been a relief is I felt like I wasn't somehow doing sobriety properly sometimes.
Yes.
Everyone else was sort of, oh God, is someone trying to call me? What's going on? My phone's beeping. Sorry. I don't know if you can hear that. But
yes, I can.
Everyone was saying it's not buzzing up, so I can't decline it. Sorry. I felt like everyone else was saying, you know, oh, I've been sober now for a year, and I've got like a, you know, I get up early in the morning, and I've got my morning routine, and I go running, and I, you know, and I do all this stuff, and I quiet my mind. And I was like, I do yoga, I do meditation, I do this, I do that, and yet I'm still constantly on edge, and my mind is constantly like a pinball machine, and I can't do routine.
I'm going to do morning routines, and I struggle to get out of bed in the morning, and all of these things, which now I know is the ADHD, and I couldn't understand how, you know, running Untoxicated, at one point we had the support group there, we had like 3,000 people in it, and people were talking about, you know, all these amazing things, and while I was definitely noticing like a huge amount of benefits of being sober, all these things were eluding me, and I was like, but I don't understand why I'm still as knackered as ever. And I, you know, all of this stuff, and now I know why.
Yeah, I totally. And I apologize because I pressed something and now I'm sparkling. I don't know if you've noticed.
It's like a metaphor, isn't it? And I was supposed to wash my hair, but I got chit-chatting to someone who's come to do the cleaning.
You look lovely. You look beautiful. It was fascinating, Faye, and I think it's a really useful conversation, and the more we can keep having it. And I can see that Loz, it's Loz, said me too, so she's obviously going through something similar. Yeah. And interestingly, I find a lot of kind of women entrepreneurs as well seem to be in that ADHD space. I think when you know, quite often you find you don't quite fit the mold.
Yeah.
In corporate world.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely had that experience myself. Like, I loved working in corporate for years. I loved it so much, so passionate about it. But, you know, I had two instances where I had a toxic boss, and yeah, I couldn't quite fit the mold of what I think I was supposed to be, and I didn't really understand why or how to fit the mold, and so I just didn't. And
Yeah, I
yeah,
think there's a knowing, isn't there, that you're somehow different from other people, but you're not quite sure why. And I always
yeah,
knew that I was kind of a bit kooky. But I think maybe this is why, you know, with Untoxicated and everything, and why I've been so fervent around the belonging
yes,
piece, that everyone
yes,
should have somewhere to belong,
yes,
because I think you feel when you've got ADHD that you don't quite fit,
yes,
you don't quite belong, and you're sort of
yes,
always on the periphery somehow.
yeah,
And even though, like, I've always had lots of friends and that hasn't
yes,
been an issue, there's
yes,
still that thing of like, somehow I don't quite, you know, I'm always sort of slightly on the outer. And maybe that's
yes,
why I thought on reflection, I'm so passionate about making people feel like they belong.
yeah. 100%, 100%. And you have done that. You have done that. And I think community, like you say, is so important in this journey. And you were saying, are you part of an ADHD group as well? Is that?
I was just trying to see if I can get the sparkles as well. I mean, I
Oh,
feel it's unfair. I feel it's unfair. Oh
it's,
no, I put a filter on. Sorry, I'll
it
take it
is,
off.
because I
I don't,
like it.
I don't know what the
Obviously,
hell I'm doing here. Oh Jesus, I don't know
we've
what
got
I've done.
distracted.
Um,
We've got distracted. Come back. Come back.
um, am I in ADHD group? Yes. So it's actually quite similar to early sobriety in that I'm obsessed with learning about it. I'm in the communities. I'm
Brilliant.
absorbing everything I can. I'm attributing everything to my ADHD. Nothing's my fault. It's all the
Yes.
ADHD. I'm looking retrospectively over my life, and going, oh, all this makes sense, or oh, that's annoying. I mean, one thing it's important, I think, to let people know is the heritability. My psych said it's about
Yes.
80%.
Yes.
So what that means is if you do think you might possibly have ADHD, then look around you to your parents and your children if you have them, because there's likelihood that it's in the family.
Yeah.
And, you know, when we're in a family unit, we know what we know because we're all take
Yeah.
that as normal. But he said to me, you know, it's pretty likely at least one of your kids will have it.
Yeah.
And I think my mum's got it as well.
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
So,
And
you
it's
know, no, you go, sorry.
it's I was saying to Faye earlier, it's interesting because you don't realize it's like with my little one, she's been just diagnosed with ADHD and autism, and now in retrospect I'm like, of course she is, but at the time you're just doing your do, aren't you? And
Yeah,
you're in deep, and you just your normal's your normal, right? That's how you
yeah,
operate in your family system. It's like, you know, that's like we were saying, it's kind of like how your parents have behaved. Like, I'm sure my dad was ADHD as well, very similar things to me. He was always, you know, getting into trouble when he was younger, and impulsive and that kind of stuff, and, you know, forgetful and a bit scattered, and, you know, but it just wasn't a thing it wasn't, you know, it wasn't known. Same thing,
no. And
parents lost jobs.
yeah, oh, okay, yeah. See, my
Yeah.
mum's always been, you know, quite a you know, offbeat type of character,
Yeah.
and she's quite forgetful. And my kids were saying to me, like, I'm pretty sure you've got early onset Alzheimer's. One of my kids
Yeah.
in particular.
Yeah.
And you know, I think you know, apparently there's quite a similarity between ADHD and Parkinson's
Yeah. Right. Okay, that's interesting.
in terms of yeah, the impact with the lack of those particular neurotransmitters, and so how it impacts your life in terms of forgetfulness, the executive functioning.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I can see
so
that in my kids too.
yeah. So what I did when I thought that I had ADHD was I wrote a massive list of all the things that I thought
Mm.
possibly were, you know, maybe a little bit different to other people.
Yes.
And I took that to the practitioner.
Yes. Yes. And funny enough, that's what I needed to do with my GP, because actually I missed that step out in mine. I had to go to the GP to be referred, first of all, to that place that I said in Sydney. And it was, that was actually quite a battle, you know. It was almost like she didn't want me to be, but you know, and I was very glad that I'd prepared a list beforehand of all the different things, and eventually she was like, oh, okay.
And that's what I'd urge people to do, is
Yeah.
because there's still a lot of lack of knowledge, and there's still, even in the medical profession, and
Yeah.
I think that, you know, you kind of really have to self-advocate, and because I'd already had that experience with the psychiatrist who basically had sort of shooed me away, I didn't want to do that again. So I was like, no, I need to kind of be prepared myself, because the other thing is, unless I prepared a list, I'd forget.
Yeah.
So when they asked me what are the symptoms, I wouldn't be able to remember.
No.
I
And the
remember
doctors don't like you emailing afterwards, do they? I forgot this and another thing, you know, they don't like that.
So, you know, I prepared the list, and then I felt like, okay, I've got, you know, a download of what I'm dealing with, and then I just added to it as I thought of more things. And, you know, one of the things I've got here is struggle to food shop.
Yeah. Oh my God. Cooking, eat, you know, any of that stuff.
When the kids were little, like the thought of being able to put together a meal plan and actually do all the steps is completely overwhelming to me.
Yeah. 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 I hear you.
Yeah, put me in a crisis where I need to get shit done and make things happen and problem solve because of the heightened intensity. No problem.
Yeah. I'm the same. That's why I have to listen to podcasts if I'm ever doing anything boring that I hate, because it's the only way I can actually get some shit done.
Yeah.
Food prep.
The thought of like actually having to think of the recipes or source the recipes, write the list, get every single bit, go to the shop and get every single thing with no missing ingredients, come back and then cook the things, and then oh no, oh my God, way too much.
I hear you. I'm the same with washing up, stuck in the dishwasher, any of that stuff. It's just like, oh, need all sorts of coping tools to manage that.
Huge amount. So I'm doing coaching at the moment, which is, you know, but he's so flat out. I can only get in once a month, and that gives strategies and things like that to be able to better manage. Yeah,
it's so interesting, isn't it? Because I've found strategies as I've got older that I can use through trial and error. But the idea of teaching them to my children is just so painful to me. And I feel really embarrassed by that. It's like the idea of having to try and teach my children how to do something that I find really fucking hard is just overwhelming.
Yeah. And honestly, I've even found as you know, with the coaching, this is why I don't put a lot of content out, is because I just can't.
Yeah.
It gets too much for me to think about, oh God, what am I going to write about? And what am I going to, you know, and then.
It's hard.
I can't, I'm not too good with the detail as is pretty prominent with this disorder. So what strategies have you found to be the most, oh shit, we've been going on for 45 minutes.
That's okay. Oh, I'm so glad you feel seen. That's so lovely.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Just silly things like always having my stuff in one bag, like always having that bag ready to go with all my stuff in. Otherwise, everything just falls apart and I lose everything. Like I said, listening to stuff when I'm doing boring things I hate, like the housework. Something that I find interesting so that I can do it without kind of really knowing I'm doing it. Find that really helpful. I have to use, for study, I have to use something called Focus Mate, which is where you co-work online.
Oh, yeah.
That's the only way that I will sit in my seat and do the work if I've got somebody else there with me. Otherwise, I'm just in the fridge. I'm just making popcorn. I'm doing my Instagram is the best it's ever been. I always say to Faye, you can tell when I'm supposed to be doing something else because my Instagram will become phenomenal.
I know. I've got
the creativity.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Unless there's a deadline, you get it.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Exactly. And even creating content for me now, I have to actually go and hire somewhere to be, because if I'm left to my own devices at home, it's not happening. Not happening at all.
Yeah, so there's all these workarounds. And what about for you, because I'm not medicated yet, what about for you in terms of quietening the mind? Have you found anything successful for that sort of sense of calm? Or
for me, it's so much what we learned in our grey area drinking coaching too. It's all the vagus nerve, it's all the polyvagal, and for me it's physical stuff. It's going through the body, it's going for a swim in the ocean, it's having a walk, and I know you like that too. Physical things, moving my body, and going through my nervous system, through my body, not through any kind of cognitive discussion.
Yeah.
How about you?
No, I agree with that, because I think with anything that's sort of intellectual, it can just sort of go round and round and round and round and round. Whereas you need to get out. You need to get out. But I think not drinking has been a huge help in being able to create some distance between the thought and the action. So I'm a lot less impulsive than I used to be, for example. I'm I am still reactive, and I get frustrated really quickly, and I find things intolerable that other people just accept, as part of work life or part of relationships or whatever. And it's the biggest inconvenience in the world. But I think being able to have that space with taking alcohol out of the piece is massively helpful in being able to deal with this.
I agree, and I also think that sometimes we have used alcohol so we can put up with shit. And when you take alcohol out of the equation, you can't put up with shit that doesn't sit well with you. And I think it's a journey into that now. It's like, okay, so I'm honoring myself by not letting shit that I don't think is acceptable. I'm not putting up with it anymore. I'm too precious to myself. Right?
Yeah, and I think also, and this is the sort of the piece that I'm on at the moment, is around this, which is what I did with the alcohol, and this is what I'm sort of starting to do now with the ADHD. Is like, okay, it is what it is. This is who you are. How do we own this? And just really fully kind of embrace what is, and part of that embracing and accepting is like, some of this is shit, and some of it's good, because I don't believe in this sort of toxic positivity, and I think also like knowing that okay, for example, if I do a job, it needs to be a contract where I'm going to have downtime afterwards, or maybe something else is going to be better for me. Maybe working full time is just, maybe it's better to take a 20% hit in terms of income. And, you know, like, so I'm not sure what that looks like yet, but just knowing that this is the way I'm wired. Yes, I'm going to be able to put some strategies in place and meds and all of that, but ultimately I've got to work with what I've got. And, you know, how can I best do that now? That's the next bit.
Yes. And it's been interesting with me and with my partner. I've been having discussions because my spatial awareness is shit, like really bad. And that is apparently a part of ADHD. It's quite a common part of ADHD. And he used to get really angry with me about it. Be like, oh my God, why do you keep like bumping into things? Why do you keep not being able to park the car properly?
But all those bruises weren't just the bruise after all. Like,
I know, right? It's actually that my spatial awareness is really bad, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, actually, this is part of me now, so you can't really tell me off. People can't really sort of, it's a little bit like you can kind of stand up and say, well, actually, it's not really acceptable for you to like give me a hard time about this anymore, because actually I'm genuinely doing the best I can, and it's not it's not that I'm just being you know, clumsy or forgetful. It's that, you know, I genuinely have an issue with my spatial awareness. It's what it is, you know.
I think that's actually quite validating, that piece.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel that now, like, I'm not doing this on purpose. It's not because I'm lazy. It's not because I'm, you know, a sort of failure as a human being. It's just, you know, any more than someone who's, you know, possibly got a physical disability, if you want to class it as a disability or not, you know, they might not be able to have the use of a limb, or you know, whatever it is. So it's like, okay, well, this is what it is. It's not my fault, and I've just got to try and do the best I can, and other people, you know, might need to make a few allowances along the way.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's frustrating, but also I reckon there are some positives about it as well. I think I definitely think that we will learn and amalgamate it into our personalities and we'll get to a place like we do with drinking where we feel like it's cool and it's fine.
I think so. I mean, I've always quite liked being a little bit quirky, and I'm already thinking about becoming an ADHD and alcohol coach.
Oh my goodness, how good would that be?
Already been looking into the ADHD coaching that my psych recommended, because he did it. So you know, I don't know where this will all end up, but it's I think exactly what you say. You'll end up kind of, you know, bringing that in as part of your identity and running with the strengths, running with the positives, and making allowances for the areas that you're not as strong, like you said, outsourcing stuff or just accepting or pivoting.
Absolutely. That's what we do, isn't it, on this journey that we're on?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, really, hats off to us. This is what my psych said, that we've, you know, managed to do everything that we've managed to do to this point.
Absolutely.
God, we're good.
Oh my goodness. And
Leah's put a comment here. I've just ordered groceries through HelloFresh because I failed at shopping. Do you know, that is, Leah, 100% what I do most of the time now. If I'm doing food shopping, I'll order online. I find it so much easier.
100%.
I'd never meal plan though.
Yeah.
That takes too much.
Take it too far. I know. Anyway, we probably should finish up. We could talk all day, couldn't we? You and me.
I can't think of no one else.
That's
Because
right.
the dog comes to say hello. Oh, thank you, Leah. That's lovely.
Ah, it's lovely.
So yeah, do
Thank
reach
you.
out if anyone wants some more info or wants
Yeah.
to know where to start, or just wants to. There's heaps of ADHD accounts on here as well
Yeah.
that I've joined
Yeah.
following, and there's ADHD groups on Facebook. But if you're thinking that maybe this is something that might be part of the piece for you, then start jotting down. And there's two websites, Chad and Attitude, and they're the two to get the information from, because they're peak bodies. They're the ones that have got the latest research and the official resources. So if you're thinking that this might be something that's in the mix for you, check those out, because as well it does present differently for women. Oh, thanks, Margaret.
Oh, that's lovely. That's very nice. All right, my lovely. Well, you have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to me about this. I know it's a subject close to both of our hearts, and I know how we both get passionate about advocating for these kind of things when they come in our radar. So beautiful to have you here,
Yeah.
my lovely Faye. And
Thanks for inviting me.
take care, and I'll see you soon.
Lots of love to you.
Bye, lovely.
Thank you everyone for tuning in as well.
Thank you.